Zeapon has recently introduced a new slider called the Axis. This is a multi-axis motorized slider series which uses top-notch carbon fiber as its primary support material. And this slider incorporates a motorized pan and tilt head within its central control mechanism. And this integrates panning motion. As well as that, it can be seamlessly coupled with Zeapon's exclusive Pons pan and tilt head, allowing for the creation of an exceptional multi-axis motorized slider. This is a pretty innovative product, and it opens up a world of possibilities, providing users with genuine multi-axis functionality and exciting filming capabilities for their sliders. Well, this is the new Axis slider from Zeapon, and I love this thing. It is really strong, solid, and I've been using it for a few weeks now, and it is absolutely awesome. Now you can see here on this unit that I'm showing you, it has functionality built into this one head to do both sliding motion and panning motion. And I'm operating this via the app at the moment, you can see there. So it's really, really good. It does both motions contained within the one unit. Now that's a little bit different to previous models of the Zeapon slider that needed the pan and tilt as a separate entity. So you can see this is the standard Pons pan and tilt. Now you can still attach this, and I'll show you that in a minute, to this. So I can just take that ball head off, take the camera off, and then apply this and still have that 3-axis motion that I love in my time lapses. So let's just have a little bit of a look at this. Now, one of the things that they've incorporated into this unit is pretty full functionality on the front face of the unit. So at the moment I'm using the app, and I probably will still use the app most of the time, because for me, when I do my time lapses, and as you know, my emphasis is on Astro Timelapse. So I want this slider to operate over a long period of time and very short movements between each step. Those of you who may be using this for video, it's really simple. You can just have it go one to the other across, and it just loops, it just keeps going, and it does that really nice slow pan. So you can keep something in the center by incorporating both of the movements here, and that can be done on the front dial really simply. So that's something that they've incorporated into this new unit, which I really like. It's really intuitive. You don't really need a manual to work it out. It's quite simple. And the good thing I love about the phone app, it's exactly the same as the previous edition. So as you know, I've been using the Zeapon sliders for quite a few generations. I've used the Micro 2 and the Micro 3 models, and I've got some exceptional time lapses using that equipment, and the way that it's set up has always been really reliable for me. It's worked well. Now the difference between those two here is that this is a fixed unit. So with the Micro 3 that you would have seen me demonstrate most recently, that is, well, I've got one here, so I'll just put it up on the bench and you can see the difference. This original Micro 3, which I love by the way, it's a fantastic slider, is more compact. So it's what they call a double distance slider, and you can see that here, where this carriage section sort of doubles the length of the actual slider. Now it's hard to see in the video here, I know, but it's been demonstrated plenty of times before, whereas this new one is a fixed length slider. So it's more traditional, I guess you'd say, in its operation and its setup. It's got these beautiful carbon fiber tracks, and I've used a lot of different sliders in my time doing my time lapses, and this is really solidly built. It's not heavy though, because it's using carbon fiber. Now I'll tell you something else I love about this slider, and we'll just take that camera off for a minute, is it's got heaps of mounting points underneath. Now have a look at that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different mounting points here. You can mount to a tripod, or you can mount in whichever way you want. I've actually got, you can see I've got some tripod plates. These are Manfrotto tripod plates that I've just screwed into the ends, so I can put this onto a tripod. And that's how I like to use my sliders most of the time. There are occasions where I might want to attach something here, and I'll show you in a minute. You can put it onto a single tripod, and they supply the extra legs to do that. I'll show you that later on. But yeah, I do like that. So you've got all these fixing points. Also, you can see on the bottom here, it's got these adjustable feet, and you can adjust each one separately. So if you're on a little bit of uneven ground, that's not a problem. So yeah, on a flat table like this, perfect. So I've done a lot of videos over the years, and sometimes you've got tables laying around at venues or receptions or whatever it might be that you're filming, and you can just put a slider like this up on a table. You can be filming something that's happening over there, or on a floor, something that's nice and level, or paving or something like that, and you can get these beautiful sliding motions. So I've done that over the years, but these days my emphasis is on time-lapse, as I mentioned. Now, one thing I will say about this unit, it incorporates a standard Sony NPF battery. There's one there. Now, because this is integrated unit where it's doing the sliding and the panning at the same time, I'd suggest using a larger battery, because I've used the smaller ones for different things in the past, never had a problem with those. But I did find when I did a long time lapse, now admittedly it was probably maybe 4.5 hours. That's a long time to be doing a time lapse. I tried one of these batteries and it actually ran out by the time I got about a bit more than 3/4 of the way through. Whereas with the larger battery, like this one, this is the NPF 970, that's the larger model. And the good thing about these batteries, by the way, is they're available on eBay. You can buy them off-brand. They don't have to be Sony brand. None of mine are. And these are cheap and reliable, easy to find. That's one thing I love about this. There's other sliders on the market that don't use these Sony batteries, and they're a pain in the butt, I can tell you that. These, fantastic. I've got a heap of these, easy to get, easy to keep with you. You know you've always got some in the bag. So I'll show you just some of the basic operation of this thing, and I want to show you some of the work that I have done. That's where the rubber hits the road with this stuff. One thing I will say is that this slider, being a fixed length unit, is a lot more difficult to transport. It comes in 3 sizes, 80 centimeters, 100 centimeters, and 120 centimeters as the longest. This is the long version, the 120 centimeter. And because of that, it's just long. It's not heavy, but it's long. So keep that in mind. Whereas the Micro 3, much more compact unit. Now, as you can see here, I've got the unit traveling from one side of the slider across about 3/4 of the way to the other side. I've set that on the app. I've basically just set 2 waypoints, an A and a B waypoint. But you can set more than 2 waypoints with this device. And so when I do my time lapses, often I'll set 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 waypoints. And a waypoint is a point that you can create a different movement. So at the moment with 2 waypoints, I'm just simply pushing the camera from here to about here and turning the turntable from this direction over to that direction. That's a pretty simple setup. You can do that in the front of this device as well. But the app gives you more options because you can set more than 2 waypoints. And it's exactly the same setup as what the previous generation sliders had, as I mentioned before. And that does make the whole operation of this thing fairly seamless if you're coming from another Zeapon slider system. So as I mentioned before, this system is totally compatible with Zeapon's previous generation of Pons, pan and tilt. So let me just show you. I'll take this ball head off of there and I will get this bracket. Now it's got a little slot here which accommodates the bracket. Some of you will already have this system, so you just slide that in there like so. And then we grab the other part of it, which is the tilt motor here, and that slots in there like so. Now I need a battery for that, so let's put that in there like that. Okay, connected, turn it on, and we should be ready to go. Now of course the app has to pick all of this up, and I'll show you a demonstration of that in just a moment. But firstly, I'll just put my camera on and you can see what it looks like. This is all very streamlined. I've got a quick release plate on here, so it does make it a pretty easy process to put the camera on, as you can see. So now we've got the camera on and we can do a tilt up and down. So now we have full 3-axis movement. And what I'll do briefly, I'll just program in that movement with the 3-axis and show you how simple that is. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I want to use the app. I'm going to program in some movements and show you how easy this really is. So first things first, let's go to the Zeapon Labs app, and it will recognize the devices and automatically connect to them. Okay, so it says they're connected there, so let's press done down here on the bottom, and it will then take us to this area here where we can actually move and do the movements that we require. So let's just start over this side. So I'll push it over to there, move it around like this, and perhaps point down a little bit like it is there now. And we'll set that as our A keyframe. And now let's move across a little bit further and maybe to about there. Move this to there and up a little tiny bit. That's our B keyframe. Let's move across further. And we now will set our C keyframe. So we'll move it around a bit further and maybe up a little bit. That is our C keyframe. Let's go right across to the other side now, and we will put the next keyframe. Let's go about there, move it around a bit further and up a bit further, something like that. That is our D keyframe. Okay, now I'll set it to loop, but you don't have to do that. Obviously, in most time lapses, you won't be doing that. And now if I press the play button, which is in the middle, what's going to happen, it will take us back to the beginning, and you can see it is going through all of those keyframe movements to get there. One thing you'll notice with the Zeapon equipment, and a lot of people don't like this for video, which I can understand, is that it stops at each keyframe point. Now, for time lapse, this doesn't matter at all because every shot is stopping. But for video, live video, as you can see here, if it was moving across and you're shooting video, you don't really want it to be stopping there. So that's something that the developers might have to work on with their app. But it's, as you can see, it's working exactly the way that I just programmed it to in the app. And for my time lapses, this works absolutely perfectly. So one of the things I love about this slider is how easy it is to program movements just by using the front dial panel here. Okay, so the first thing we do is just turn it on by pressing the on button. You'll see the screen light up there. And from there, we're looking at being able to shift the slider into the start and end position, and then we're going to set the A and B waypoints. So let's begin by pushing it over to about here. And then moving the camera around that way. So remember, we're just working with 2 axes here at the moment, and I'll press the A and we hear a slight beep. From there, we just use the buttons to bring the slider over to wherever we think we need it to be for our B point. Let's say about there, and we can change the angle. Well, let's go back this way. Change the angle of the camera to go there, and press the B. There's that slight beep. And we can also press the loop function, which is there. Okay, so all we need to do now is press this button here, little triangular button, to start the process. And off it goes. Fantastic. And that's going to go from one keyframe back and forth to the next. And that works a treat. Currently it's working at 100% speed, but it is adjustable there, but you cannot adjust that speed whilst the operation is in process. You have to start, operate the speed, change the speed, and then put it back to where you want it to be. And if I want to stop it, all I have to do is press this button down the front here, and it will stop in that position. If I press that button again, it will restart. Now, of course, one of the things that I mentioned this earlier, but is the backwards compatibility of the products. So for example, the Zeapon Timelapse trigger which I use a lot for my day to night time lapses, for my Nightscape time lapses. I just stick that up on top of the camera like that, and the camera then controls the slider. Works beautifully. I've already showed you the Pond's pan and tilt arrangement. All of these are the same devices that were already available from Zeapon from the Micro 2 and 3 series. The whole lot just integrates seamlessly, and that's something I love about this whole unit. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this when you're operating the unit from the front panel, it only has the option of 2 keyframes, an A and a B keyframe, which for a lot of things is all you need. But if you need more than 2 keyframes, you have to use the Zeapon Labs app. And to be honest, I mainly use the app because sometimes I like to have 3 or 4 keyframes. So if you've decided you want to finish this and cancel those keyframes, just go into the menu button here, and that will give you the option, delete A and B. Click on this button here. It says, are you sure you want to delete? And you say, yes, I do. And there's a loud beep, and then those keyframes are now deleted. They're gone. And we're back to where we were before. Now, just having a bit of a look at this menu, there are other options in there, as you can see. And so you can just access the menu by clicking down here. There's a time lapse, add device, firmware updates, language. So it's pretty simple. There isn't a whole lot in there that you need to worry about, and it is fairly intuitive. So you won't have any problems looking at that and saying, oh yes, I understand what that does. Another thing that you might find handy is this button here with the hand on it. So if you press on that one, it gives you the option to actually move the device manually. As you can see, I can now move this thing manually without having to use the app. So you can see there with that hand motion selected, I can just manually move the slider to the A or B point and quickly set up a time lapse doing it that way. A lot of people like that feature. I probably don't use it very much because it's just pretty simple doing it this way, but it does take a while to get right across a 1.2 meter slider. So there is a quicker way of selecting the A and the B point. You can see here on the bottom of the unit, quite a lot of mounting holes here. Big ones, small ones, as you go along. Same here. You can see there's my plate that I've mounted onto it for a quick release on the ends. You can also see here the adjustments for these legs, and they fold all the way in or all the way out, depending on how you want to store it or transport it. Really simple, just a push button lock there. So I like that. And I'll show you now how this thing mounts on top of a tripod. Okay, so how do I mount this on the tripod? Well, there's a couple of ways, but firstly, I can just line up that 3/8 hole there and screw it on. So let's do that. Just got to get it level, of course. Takes a bit of playing with, but I think it's pretty easy to do. There we go. Now that's going on there quite nicely. Now that's all well and good. You've got the weight across there, but once this unit gets out towards the end of the tripod, it's going to be weighing down. There's no way knowing that's going to hold properly. So of course, Zeapon have provided these 2 rails, and these are pretty much similar to what they had on the Micro 3 slider. They work a treat. So because they've supplied so many mounting points here, this job is quite easy. So on the end of these rods, which are extendable, you can make them whatever length you want, there's a little screw in. So you can put that here. Let's just say I put it there for the time being, but I can put it in any of those holes. That's why they supply so many holes. I can put it there, and then I can go down to this, in this case, the center column on the tripod, and clamp it on, as you can see. Clamp that there, do that up nice and tight so that it takes the tension. And now as the weight comes over this side, that pushes down, but it pushes down on the tripod here. And on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing with the other leg. And this time I'm going to attach it to the leg of the tripod itself. So let's just put that in there. Now you can work this out to suit yourself. I mean, like I've said before, I've used mainly a tripod on each end when I've mounted this, but if you've just got one tripod like this one and you want to do it this way, no problem, just do that. So I'm just going to put that on there like that. Same setup down here, clamp it onto the tripod leg like that, do that one up nice and tight. Now there's no way knowing any weight transference across here is going to cause any trouble, because each of these arrangements here, just make sure they're nice and tight, all of these knuckles, but once it moves, it is rock solid. And I think Zeapon, this is a fantastic way that they've come up with to just use a single tripod for something that's fairly heavy like this slider. So just to illustrate my point, I've got my camera up on the slider going across automatically, and it's keeping me in the center of the frame. Now this is in live video mode, so if I want to do some talking piece to the camera, then that long length of 1200 millimeters is ideal to get that sort of movement and that parallax movement in the background, which you love when you're trying to do something a little bit more creative out in the field. Now, one of the most common uses of a camera slider is to do what is known as a reveal shot, where you start on something close up and move to something a little bit further back in the background. And this slider is perfect for that, again, mainly because of the long length of the slider. That 1200 millimeters gives you an enormous amount of travel, and that works perfectly for the reveal shot. So there you have it. This is the amazing new Zeapon Axis slider. 1200 millimeters, 1000 millimeters, or 800 millimeter lengths. Well, I think this is fantastic, and it's a great addition to the Zeapon range. Particularly, as I said, everything is compatible backwards, and I love that about it. So I'll be producing a heap more Astro Timelapses with this device, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos where we expand and see what we can come up with. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later in the next video. You have a fantastic week.